Now, here's another thing. As you listen to that passage, and I'm looking back over it again as I'm sitting here, we might be a little disturbed by what Jesus has sort of asked us to do in this. He talks about some situations that would probably be uncomfortable for most of us to go into. Like going into prison to visit a prisoner. Last time I checked, most of those people actually deserve to be there. They're not people that we would feel comfortable around necessarily. They're not the kind of people that you want to just go hang out with. It doesn't sound like it would be a really good experience to go do that. He also talks about inviting in a stranger. And obviously, when you're thinking about inviting a stranger and you're thinking about somebody who has no other place to go, or a homeless person. Now, in his culture, that could have been the case, or it could have been a traveler, or it could have been what they would have called an alien, or somebody from outside of their land, their religious system, and they're saying, invite that person into your home. Well, back then that would have been a risky thing. Even nowadays, inviting a stranger into your home could be a risky kind of a thing. One of the tough things about homeless people in America is there's a significant portion of them who are mentally ill. So inviting a homeless person into your house could be downright dangerous. You never know. But in some ways you might be looking at this saying, well, Jesus is asking me to do something that I'm not sure that I'm capable of doing, or is it even wise to be doing these kinds of things? Also, he does mention the word brothers once in there, but he's not necessarily talking about them as fellow believers. This is Jesus we're talking about here. So he's kind of flung open the doors. While John has just talked about brothers, people who are fellow Christians, people probably from our own church, Jesus has sort of said, well, this kind of applies to anybody. If you see anybody in need, you should take action for them. Feeding a hungry person, giving a thirsty person something to drink, clothing a naked person, visiting somebody who's incarcerated, inviting a stranger in and providing them with hospitality. All of these kinds of things. I have a story to tell, though, about kind of this situation. Back when I was in seminary, I had a friend who was the associate pastor at a church. And the town where the church was at hosted a Renaissance festival every summer. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Renaissance festivals, but essentially what they are these... sorry about the yawn. These gatherings of folks who pretend to be living in medieval times. They have a king and a queen, and they're all in medieval dress, and they have things like jousts and sword fights and different kinds of things going on there, comedy troupes, all different kinds of stuff. And it'll go on for a series of weekends over the course of a month or a couple of months. It just depends on where it's at or what's going on. And all these people who are there, it's kind of a traveling group. They'll do a Renaissance festival in one place for a while, then they'll move on to another place and do it for a while, and so on and so forth. Now, these people, the people who tend to be a part of these Renaissance festivals, aren't always exactly the most desirable kinds of folks. Number one, they can be pretty odd. They don't necessarily have very good bodily hygiene. It just can be kind of weird. But on top of that, lots of times folks who are involved in Renaissance Festival kind of work, that's what they do for a living, many of them, I can't say many, but I know that for a fact that there are some that get involved in the occult, in witchcraft. There are some that get involved in drug use. It's just not a good thing. Well, here they have this thing going on in my friend's town, this Renaissance Festival. And even though the church knows that these folks are not the kind of people you necessarily want to hang out with, they decide that they're going to love them. They're going to love them because they know that these people are people who are in need. Not only are all these other perhaps bad things going on in their lives, but they know that a lot of these Renaissance Festival workers barely live at the subsistence level. They barely have enough to cover the costs of getting enough to eat over the course of a week or paying whatever bills they might have. So what they decided to do was once a week, while the Renaissance Festival is in town, they would put on a huge dinner for them in a public park that is not very far away from where the Renaissance Festival sets up at. And they grill hot dogs and hamburgers and chicken up and have all kinds of fixings with it and put it on, and they invite the Renaissance Festival workers to come in. They call them Rennies. And come in to have something to eat. So, doesn't sound exactly comfortable, does it? I mean, the easier thing for them to do would be to kind of go with their feelings, to go, I don't know. I don't really care for those folks. They're a bit odd. They stink. I don't know what kinds of drugs they might be on. They're weird. Or maybe it might have been easier just to pay it lip service, to say, well, yeah, we love the Renaissance Festival workers. Yeah, that's fine. But they didn't. They put on these meals. And they ate with them as well. They didn't just serve up the meal and run. They too would sit down, grab something to eat. You'd sit down with the Renaissance Fair workers and do that. Now, my friend invited me up to take a look at that, so I went up and spent a day helping them, or an evening, helping them get the food all together and grill it up and setting up tents and things, canopies and stuff like that to eat under, and picnic tables and things like that. So we got all that stuff set up, and then all these Renaissance Festival workers came, all the Rennies came out, and probably, man, I don't know, 100, 120, and just eating. And so I tried it out, and it wasn't always real comfortable. I mean, I sat down next to a group of people I didn't know, I'd never talked to before. They were all together, they all knew each other, but they didn't know me, and I'm trying to strike up a conversation with these folks. I'm trying to find an opportunity to share about Jesus with them. I didn't get a real good opportunity to do that. We did touch on a few spiritual things, but we never got deep enough in order to be able to do that kind of stuff. But it was interesting that at the end of the night, the leader of these Rennies stood up to talk to the church members who were there. And it was this very large man. He was very heavy set, overweight kind of a guy. But he dressed up as a woman. And in fact acted like a woman, but it was very obviously a man because he had a beard, but he went around like he was a woman. And speaking on behalf of all the rest of the Rennies there, he said to the church people, he said, you know, we never really cared for Christians all that much. We didn't really like them, didn't really trust them. But through the course of these meals, or having these meals served to us, and this wasn't the first year they had done this, this had been a while that they'd been doing this every single summer. He said, you know, our minds are changing about what Christians, or who Christians are, what they're like. And our minds are changing about Jesus as well. So the work that these folks did in loving them, by caring for them, by putting love into action, not just driving by and thinking about it, not saying a prayer, even though praying is very important. Again, please don't hear me saying that prayer isn't important, or telling somebody that you love them isn't important. Those things are important. But yet, by themselves, especially just, you tell somebody you love them, but you're not willing to do anything for them,